know, this is giving me some serious Persona vibes right now. Video game music gets a really bad rap from the normie community. If we look at my Spotify right now, sure, we got my Laufey, my indie mix, my hip hop mix, but we also got a little bit of Final Fantasy in there. You could take one look at me and tell that I'm a gamer, but I feel like I have to pretend like I don't absolutely love this music sometimes. And I think it's because there's this weird stigma around video game music. So we're gonna play this little game I like to call classical or gaming. I'm gonna play 2 tracks and you have to decide if it's a classical tune or a grimy gamer type beat. Okay, round 1, 5 seconds each. Alright, that one was kind of a freebie. Obviously this is Mozart and this is Tetris. Round 2, I promise this is gonna be harder. The first song was Someday the Dream Will End from Final Fantasy X, and the second was from St. John's Passion by Bach. This might seem really easy, but I guarantee you I'm gonna trump you with this last one. I tricked you. The first track was Moonlit Sonata from Spider-Man Web of Shadows, and the second one was Hungarian Dance No. 5 from Donkey Konga. And it just goes to show you the power of gaming music. Obviously, I'm kidding with that last one, but I do think gaming gets a pretty bad rap, and for the most part, it's undeserved. I think it's a lack of understanding and exposure that's built up this stigma. If you're my mom's age, you're probably thinking of like Pac-Man or Donkey Kong, iconic themes, but there's no way I'm gonna sit here and listen to 25M on repeat. And I think a lot of music from that era gives off that same vibe. The NES could only handle up to 5 channels of sound at once, and that's including sound effects. And just to put that in perspective for you, the average EDM song has anywhere from 50 to 120 channels at once. We got a ton of iconic tunes during the NES era. The Super Mario Bros. Theme, the Legend of Zelda theme, this song. It is mind-boggling that a song like this exists on an NES game, and it takes up 10% of the cartridge, all for gameplay that looks like this. Although they were really good tracks, they're not going to replace Michael Jackson anytime soon. The main reason I think most of this isn't considered music is because all of this is serving a purpose. Boss music, overworld theme, whatever it is, it's made with the intent of conveying an emotion, or more prominently during the earlier generations, looping. Most of these songs are at most a minute long, if not 30 seconds. The castle theme from Super Mario Bros. Has only been playing for about 20 seconds now, but I'm sure it's getting on your nerves a little bit. But they need to be able to loop way longer for that. So a lot of the tracks feel super repetitive, and the longer you heard them, the more you were probably gonna hate them. Looping is just a normal part of music, of course, but I think when you add it with purpose, that's where people get their disdain for this genre. The final nail in this coffin were digital instruments or just straight up sounds. This time period marks the most prominent use of digital instruments in games. Of course, it still exists nowadays, but it started off as mostly boops and beeps instead of trumpets and drums. This started to really change in the 7th generation with the introduction of orchestrated soundtracks. Now before you go down into your comment section and leave that one-off example of something from the 6th generation, I know that The Lost World Jurassic Park was the first PlayStation game to ever use an orchestrated soundtrack. I know that Nintendo's example is Melee. I get it. It didn't really become commonplace or expected until this generation. I'm sure you remember your first time hearing the Mario Galaxy soundtrack. The Observatory, Gusty Garden, Space Junk, they're so filled with life and energy that until this point, Mario didn't see super often. To highlight the difference between orchestrated music and digital music, I think a great example are Mario 64 covers. The people who make these are obviously incredibly talented, but you can hear a difference in soul, and I think one is clearly better than the other. You can feel it too, right? The product of the wind instruments, the guitars, the saxophone is something the Mario 64 soundtrack or the digital tools of that time could have never created, and that's okay. The introduction of orchestrated music makes it easier for a lot more people to enjoy the music, in my opinion. If you like the music, you like the music. It doesn't matter if it's the NES or the PS5, you're probably going to enjoy it. But people who don't really like games like that probably don't feel the same way. Let's take Meta Knight's Revenge for example. The original is a pretty snazzy boss theme. It has a really high tempo and energy to it. It's a classic Kirby theme. This one is a jazz cover from the 8-bit band. These two songs have very different energies, but at its core, it's still the same song. The saxophones, trumpet, and piano are able to accomplish something that the Super Nintendo could never do. And if you don't think it matters, this one won a Grammy, so clearly it matters a little bit. Orchestras are great and all, but there are a ton of genres out there, and of course it's not the only kind of music we saw in games. A ton of different video game music is able to masquerade as something else entirely. Metal Gear isn't usually known for its music. Snake Eater, Metal Gear Solid 1's theme, fantastic tracks, but you probably didn't walk away from any of these games having music being the best part of it for you. Unless that is, we're talking about Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is one of the best examples of a game soundtrack blending in with any other playlist. So much of this game's soundtrack is embedded in some of the best rock and metal music I've ever heard in a game. What makes this soundtrack really special is it does an even better job of fulfilling its purpose than most other games do. The fight with Armstrong is great alone, but with It Has to Be This Way in the background, it takes this fight to a whole other level. The entire ending scene wouldn't hit the same without this song. It's my favorite example to whip out when people claim they don't like video game music. You can't talk about video game music that blends in with any other music without bringing up this guy. Even at his absolute worst, you can make a pretty safe bet that the music is going to be enjoyable. Sonic 3D Blast, one of the worst platformers I've ever played in my life, still has some really great songs in it. His transition into 3D might have been a little rough, but Crush 40 never missed a single beat. Open Your Heart, Live and Learn, I Am, His World, Sonic Heroes, Night of the Wind. The best part of turning on most of these Sonic games was the chance to hear these songs again. Sonic R stands as the best example of how bad Sonic games can be, but how great the soundtracks can be. This is one of the worst video games I have ever played, and yet it's one of the best soundtracks and music I've ever heard in my life. Every single poorly designed map is accompanied by some of the best pop and disco the genre has to offer. This soundtrack is so good, it almost makes you forget how bad Sonic R really is. I could listen to this album non-stop on repeat and I would never skip a single song. I feel like the biggest reason people love music in general is the emotions it's able to make us feel and the memories we attach to them. I could ask my dad about any song from when he was in high school, and he could tell me the people he was with, when he first heard it, and any other special memories he might have attached to it. And that's how a lot of the songs from my favorite games make me feel. My heart still drops when I hear the Tears of the Kingdom main theme, my eyes still water when I hear Passion from Kingdom Hearts 2, and I can remember how it felt to punch Dark Bowser when I heard the final theme of Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. It's not just moments from games though. I can't help but remember all of the fond memories I have playing Smash 4 in my friend's basement whenever I hear its main theme. I can remember the adrenaline and the goosebumps I got when I heard One Wing Angel live for the Final Fantasy VII concert. Just like any other piece of music, it makes you feel something. I don't think I'm gonna radically change anyone's mind about video game music after watching this. But you know, I really love a lot of what I hear in video games nowadays. So the next time someone plays something from a game, maybe you'll be a little bit more open-minded, or maybe at the very least you'll be a little less harsh on them. If you take anything away from this video, listen to Sonic R. It's one of the best albums of all time. But don't actually play Sonic R. This game fucking sucks. And you don't seem to